Welcome to Over 50 and Frank, the podcast that says the quiet parts out loud. I'm Shannon, known as Frank when I drop the filter. Around here, we talk about aging, menopause, wellness, and life after 50 with honesty, humor, and zero apologies. If you're over 50 and craving real talk, pull up a chair and share with a friend. Today's episode is about a beautiful blend of personal and historical. I'm joined today by writer Kerry Chaput, who shares her own journey of menopause and her deep love for uncovering hidden stories of women in history. We talk about what it means to move through midlife with curiosity instead of fear, and how the stories of brave, defiant women from the past can help us reframe who we are now becoming. We also dive into Kerry's latest book, The Secret Courtesan, and the powerful women who shaped history from the margins, often without credit, permission, or applause. If you love strong women in history, storytelling, and honest conversations about becoming more yourself in your midlife, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. So I'm here with Kerry Chaput. She is a local writer to Bend, Oregon, and we met through social media and we have various friends. Kerry, where are you at in your menopause, perimenopause journey?
I am truly in the thick of perimenopause. I talk about it very freely in life and on my social media, and because it's something that was never talked about ever. I feel like this is just in the last probably year, maybe two. It's the first time that this has opened up, and it's so amazing to be like, oh my gosh, other people are going through the same thing as me. So yeah, I love this dialogue that we're having around it.
So what was one of the first symptoms that you had?
Looking back, I could see a lot of things kind of sneaking up. I got joint pain, sleep disruption, kind of some things that were all just kind of weird that didn't match, and I couldn't treat them, and nothing was getting better. But really where it started to really hit me was about 2 years ago, and I got a resurgence of panic attacks, the likes of which I have not had since middle school. I mean, I've had panic attacks off and on in my life. I've had panic disorder. It's been a huge problem for me. But through my 30s, I was like, oh, it's cured. This is great, and then I hit mid 40s and it just hit me like a freight train, just severe, debilitating panic attacks, sometimes up to 4 times a day. So, and of course I went back to my therapist and I talked to the doctor about meds, and it didn't even hit me that it could be hormone related. And I don't think any of it hit me that it was hormones until probably this last 6 to 8 months that I started realizing, putting the pieces together. Oh, of course. Yeah, that's what this is.
I didn't realize that panic attacks were part of perimenopause until I read Dr. Mary Claire Haver's book.
Yep.
And
I know. Her content is just what? It's all the things that we need to hear.
I literally had a friend say something like, who's the same age as me, so I'm 50, say something to the effect of, when I hit perimenopause. And I was like, girl, you hit perimenopause 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, I don't have hot flashes and I don't have this. And then I was like, have you had this? Have you had this? Have you had this? And the big one was they feel like they're in pain all the time, or they're creaky joints.
Yeah.
They've complained about that to me. I'm like, what do you think the creaky joints is? The joint pain,
Because no one told us. They basically are like, you're going to have a few hot flashes and then your cycle is just going to end one day. That's what menopause was told to us as. And then I think back and I'm like, oh my gosh, our mothers and grandmothers, how much did they suffer through all this and had no idea that this is a normal change with hormones?
Yeah, and my mom died at 47, and I had to hunt and peck for information. I had to ask my aunt, who was like, oh, I don't remember, because my aunt's 15 years younger. But then I asked my aunt, when did you hit menopause? She's like, I had no symptoms, turned 52 of my period.
You hear that a lot, and it's like after you have a baby and you forget. I think that's a big part of it. It's you move on and you don't realize, we're sitting here talking about it, and I can name 5 to 7 things that I had no idea were related to perimenopause.
Yeah. So Kerry's here because she describes herself as someone who celebrates badass women. And she describes herself as that, but she does that. If you follow her anywhere on social media, she talks about badass women in history, and she's an amazing writer. She wrote this book called Chasing Eleanor, which I absolutely love. Actually, we might talk about this a little later because I saw some quote that you put on social media about, we'll talk about that. But basically she wants to talk about brave, defiant, and often forgotten women. And I love that. So let's talk about where this passion comes from. Like, what inspired you to start writing about women in history and who defied expectations?
It's been a long road of getting to the place, as I'm sure most women around my age can kind of understand. I spent so many years sort of living in a way other people's lives, or the life that other people chose for me. And I wrote my first story when I was 12, and it was about a woman in history. And I don't remember what it was, but this is something that I have sort of loved always. And anyone who follows me has probably heard this story, but growing up, my dad was a US history teacher, and he taught lectures for his 11th grade class, high school class, in my living room my entire childhood. So every Thursday night, I'd listen to history lectures from the time I was a little kid. And for fun, I would just hide behind the couch because it was like the cool high schoolers, you know? And I'd listen to them debate history, and it was exhilarating. I loved it. So history to me has always been this living, breathing thing around me. But I noticed at a very young age that there were no lectures about women. Nothing. It was all men, all stories about men and how they conquered, and wars and presidents. And so it stuck with me, and I didn't realize until I really sat down to commit to writing at 40. I didn't realize until then that that little seed that had been planted just grew and grew and grew. And at some point I just couldn't turn away from the thing that I loved anymore. And at 40, I decided I'm doing it. I'm finally going to write.
And I love the Defying the Crown series too.
Thank you.
That whole series about, I'm probably going to butcher what it's like. If I was going to give it a synopsis, it's basically like, what is it, 1600s?
Yeah, 1660s.
1600s. I'm going off of memory, and it's like when the Catholics were prosecuting the Protestants in France.
Yep.
And you follow a heroine through this journey of basically like, you know, moving all over the place, hiding, and then she goes in and she is bringing people across the border. Like, I couldn't wait until the next one came out.
Oh, thank you. What's really cool about that is these little things that line up. I was just researching about a specific town in southern France that had really strong resistance activities during World War II. And you can trace it back to the Protestant resistance several hundred years before that. They've lived in resistance for so long, and they were saving Protestants and getting them out of the country. And then during World War II, they're now saving Jewish people and everyone else that they're persecuting, getting them out of the country. And so I love how that kind of just lives in places for a long time. So, and the Defying the Crown series all came about because I was researching my husband's ancestry. He's French Canadian. And I discovered the story of these women who were plucked from poverty, and the king gave them an opportunity and said, hey, you want to go to Canada? And, you know, we'll pay you money and you can choose your husbands. And I was reading this like, what? Why have I never heard this before? And it became, never heard of it ever. And my husband, who's 100% French Canadian, is like, what? Like, didn't even know where his family came from in France. Never heard of these women. They're called the Filles du Roi, the daughters of the king. Anyways, writing that series just absolutely exploded my love for women's history, because it was an adventure just going into research every day.
It was like, what? I grew up Catholic, and then I had all this like, oh my God, I feel bad that
it's just history. That's how it all was. Like, the religions have been fighting each other forever and ever.
Yeah. So was there a particular historical woman or story that like lit a fire for you to write about?
Not necessarily in writing. Well, I would say my answer is always Eleanor Roosevelt. She lights a fire in me daily. Truly, whenever I have a whole bunch of books back there, biographies and autobiographies, and her story always gives me something to be inspired by and something to motivate me. And what's really fascinating about her is that when I asked my dad when I was younger, give me some women from history that I can look at and that I can research, and he mentioned Eleanor Roosevelt. So I literally went to the library, right, because it was the 80s, and I got books on Eleanor Roosevelt. And the thing that made me instantly feel kind of attached to her was not her amazing work as First Lady. It was her childhood. It was really, really difficult, hard, lonely childhood. And all of that gave her this sense of empathy that just grew and grew and grew with time. And she used that to fight for all of these huge, big systemic problems. And I think something in my young brain saw her as, okay, she went from becoming an orphan by the time she was 9, having this really chaotic, miserable childhood, to becoming what she was, this pioneer in women's rights and civil rights and all of these things. And it gave me this sense that all that hard stuff can be used to do something great. It'll make you into what you're supposed to be. And so her story always gives me that feeling.
And Chasing Eleanor is an amazing book.
Thank you. I put my whole everything into that book. It was very emotional to write that.
Okay, so we kind of touched on this a little bit about like history not being talked about, erased. Do you see parallels between those struggles and what we face today?
I do. Obviously, they're different in some ways because we do have some of the systemic support now that we didn't then. Like you and I can get an education. It's very accessible. That wasn't to them. So there are some things that are different, but the societal pressure that's just accepted about women to be fill in the blank. Skinny, quiet, compliant, happy. That's been there. It's not changed. And so while we might have a little more support in society, there's still this belief that you have to fit into one mold to be considered like good. And it is hard sometimes to step out of that. We talked earlier about me wanting to be a writer. My parents said no. My parents said that's not a career. You're not going to make any money. So they chose my career for me. They chose my major in college and I did it. I went all the way through grad school for a job that was not ever my choice. And so that was the societal pressure to be like, well, you can go to college, but only under our circumstances that we say are approved and this is responsible. And I did it because it was like good daughter or whatever. I don't know. So I think that there's still all of these limits from society and then in our own minds because we've internalized all that is so hard to break out of. And that is the part that I love about perimenopause that I wish more people talked about is that yes, your body's gonna fall apart. Your body's gonna break. It's going to be hard. But what comes out, what emerges, is more powerful than you've ever known up until this point in your life.
Exactly. And you may be experiencing this. You mentioned, like, I started writing when I was 40. I've experienced as a woman that as I get older, there's less and less things that I put up with.
Yes.
And like people-pleasing tendencies and that be seen, not heard mentality.
Yep.
Like, is basically like gone. I'm done. I am done. Like, and it applies to everyone. Like,
yep.
It applies to, like, no one is immune to it. It applies to family. It applies to friends. It applies to my day-to-day work.
Yep.
So much.
When you're in the grocery store, like, I don't step out of the way anymore when people come near me. Like, if I'm busy, I'm going to stand there and look at what I'm looking at and you can walk around me. I mean, I'm done putting myself last after everybody else.
Yeah, I actually need to put that more into play than you say that. I do that, but there's still room for improvement.
Me too.
My ideal morning would be I wake up, I read, I journal, and then I get ready. But I literally wake up, get ready, come to the office, turn the computer on, start typing away, and then it's 4 o'clock. Then I go home and it's like I'm on driver duty, I'm on dinner duty, I'm on cleanup duty, and it's 8 o'clock. And I'm finally sitting down to read.
Yeah, we come last still. And I think that that's ingrained in us. And I don't know how much we're going to really change that in our life. Maybe. But like, perfect example, I had an opportunity this last weekend to go to this incredible writers retreat near us on the Metolius. And it was going to be free. It was just something that a friend of mine had access to and they had like an opening. And I hesitated, not because I didn't want to go, not because it wouldn't have been amazing, a whole weekend out in the forest to write. Yes, please. But because the first thing that I thought was how much everyone else needed me. My daughter had a birthday party and I had to take her shopping and my nephew had a soccer game and I had to do some errands for my husband. Like I came last, this incredible opportunity. And I talked to my husband. He's like, what are you doing? Go on this. Of course, by the time I said yes, I had missed the opportunity. It was all because my initial thought was, I can't just say yes without finding someone else to pick up all the pieces that I would be like dropping over the weekend.
Yep, I experienced that. I go to Brighton Bush for 2 nights a year by myself with no friends or family with me because it's a place where they cook for you and there's no phones. Like you can't really, there's no Wi-Fi or anything out there. And it's just kind of like, what do you do? And then it makes you think like, maybe I should take things a little slower. And then I come home and then I do it for like a week and then it's like, it's all back to like, but it's like taking those moments for yourself.
I went to a castle for 3 days by myself to write. So same thing. It was lovely. And you kind of forget what it's like, to put yourself first.
No fun. Okay, well, let's talk about the badass woman term. What does that mean to you? Is it rebellion, resistance, independence, all that, or is it something else?
To me, it's probably something else. I think that the stories that I choose, they all give me a certain kind of feeling. There are women that I come across that have done some really amazing things and they don't click that thing in me that says, oh, I have to write a story about this, I have to write a Substack, whatever, I have to do an Instagram post. Because the ones that tend to really kind of light me up are the ones that didn't just do something for them. Their choices created a ripple effect that created systemic change or left the world better for other women. That's the thing for me that kicks them up another notch, because something I'm realizing it's been forming in my head over the last year is that everyone loves this idea of like a feisty woman, right? Who gets a little sassy with their words and who kind of, pushes back in the moment. But really, if we're not using that courage to break down the system that put us here in the first place, then we're just cosplaying bravery, in my opinion. So badass women in history to me are the ones who stepped out and said, I don't care what you say. I don't care who says no. I don't care what's in front of me. I'm going to do the thing that I'm going to do. And those stories tend to just rise to the top, and they kind of have a shining light on them. And I always know exactly who I'm going to write about.
Was there a particular person that gave you chills, like this has to be told?
Tons. Like, I think that happens to me at least weekly.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah. The one that really kind of shook me, and my poor husband all day, I couldn't stop talking about it. I'm like, and then this happened, and then that happened. The one that really did that to me was Virginia Hall, who was she was a spy in World War II. And the reason that she's so fascinating to me is because she wanted to be a diplomat. That was her lifelong dream. And there really were no women diplomats at the time. They were non-existent. So she decided, I don't care. I'm going to get a job in a field office, even if it's as a secretary. I'm going to take the classes or whatever, take the tests, and I'm going to do this. And they all said, no, you're a woman, and no, it's no everywhere. Well, she ended up having a hunting accident and getting her lower leg amputated. And that took her out of the running. Could not be a diplomat with an amputation. I don't know why. So she really had to find something else. And World War II hit. She was there when the very beginnings, right? She's an American woman, and she's like, I have things to offer. And they're like, no, you're a woman, you're disabled, we don't want any of this. So the resistance really didn't even want to work with her. She tried to, I think she was driving for an ambulance at one point, just trying to do her part. She ended up meeting someone from the spy center in London, like their version of the CIA, and trained her to be a spy. And she ended up being one of the first women to be dropped into Nazi-occupied France. And she posed as a journalist. And she created a vast network of spy rings, like thousands of people, all on her own. She didn't trust her superiors. A lot of the people she worked with were men who didn't think that she deserved to be there. And so she did it all on her own. And she became one of the Gestapo's most wanted spies, most wanted people. Wow. And because she was an American woman, at a time when America wasn't even in the war, she could really kind of just fly through. The Germans just didn't really even think anything about her. And at one point, they were closing in so much on her that she needed to flee. And so she hiked through the Pyrenees Mountains in deep snow for like 50 miles with a wooden leg to get away from Nazis. And after all this, and she was arrested in Spain when she got there. She finally gets out of there, and they basically were like, thank you for your service, you can go now. And she's like, oh, I'm not done. So she found a way to disguise herself as an elderly milkmaid from France, and she found a dentist to grind down her teeth to play the part. And she went back in, and at one point was selling cheese to German officers as one of their most wanted spies. So it's like her story just keeps rolling into more and more unbelievable information. I mean, she never gave up, and she never let up. And even when she came back to the States and worked a desk job at the CIA, she's like, I don't fit in here. I need to be back in the field. She felt her purpose out there in the most dangerous situation in the world. And that just gave me chills when I read about it.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm just like you said, it just keeps like snowballing. Like,
I know. And there's even more too, but there's no time for that. But that's one of because I'd never heard of her before. I found her on the CIA website. I was doing a search on something else, and I went, what? How do we not know about this woman? She saved downed airmen. She saved, thousands of people she saved. So yeah, I think that she's a story that really made me feel like, oh boy, some people need to know about her.
So how has writing about these women shaped your own confidence or sense of purpose?
It is an ongoing process for me, and they are everything to me. Confidence has been a struggle my entire life. It has been just terribly insecure I was this really sensitive, introverted, anxious kid. And as I've grown up into being an adult, I've sort of really struggled to just step into whatever I believe that I want to, and believe that I can take up space and that I deserve success and all of those things. And so when I read about these women doing truly the impossible and also saying, I don't need your help, I'm going to do it on my own, I walk away feeling like I can do the thing that I want to do because they did. To me, writing, I have a purpose. I have a message. I have something I want to say, and look at them every day as a reminder that we can leave a legacy of something that we believe in on the bigger, grander, scheme. And they make me feel empowered. Like I can do it.
I love that. I love the legacy question. When people ask me that, I have a really hard time with it, but it's just kind of like, if I can raise amazing children that do amazing things, that's a great accomplishment. It's not too deep, but at the same time, like,
I mean, it is though. It is, because that's what they say. Like, how do you change the world? You raise your kids right. I mean, really, it's that straightforward. So yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. I also feel though that for me personally, I have to keep something that is just for me. And that's where writing has been this amazing little window for that. Because my whole life has been career and family and kids, and I didn't have anything left. And so now to be able to pursue this thing that is purely just my passion, I can do that and raise good kids, And so that's my goal. But I feel like finding that thing for me has tethered me down to such a more just focused and strong person. And I think of how much time I wasted just trying to make everybody else happy. And it never works. No one's ever happy.
No, you're right. You're totally right. I was interviewed by the Wall Street Journal a couple weeks ago. They were doing a piece on a clothing company that I actually absolutely love, and I think they were trying to see if I didn't like the company. Anyway, when I told them what I did for a living, I said, I'm 50, I live in Bend, Oregon, and I'm a content creator. The journalist said back, isn't everybody?
Thanks for that.
And I was like, well, my whole thing is, if I can inspire somebody to get dressed, somebody to take care of their health and wellness, buy products that actually work, because we are inundated with all these things and all these ads. Does it actually work? Like, my neighbor jokes like, oh, you're an influencer because you've influenced me to buy so many things that have worked. I just was like, yeah, I'm a content creator. That's what I do. I create content. I figure out like what works for me, and I want to tell other people. But
that's the doing, right? That's the doing. The message is the legacy. The message is 50 and thriving.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, I want my daughter to know like what she's going to expect at this age. I mean, my mom didn't even tell me that I was ever going to get a period.
Yeah. Oh, me either.
Period when I was a month from it was either my 10th or a month from my 11th or 12th birthday. I think it was my 11th birthday. I was with my dad out of town, and I was in a bathroom in Hastings, Nebraska, crying. And this woman had to explain to me that I got my period.
It's like that scene from My Girl, remember, where she gets her period and she's hysterical because she thinks she's dying?
Yeah.
No, I remember watching that and being like, oh yeah. Nobody explained our bodies to us then. They don't explain it to us now. And I love that that's changing. And all this dialogue is helping with that.
Yeah, I made sure that my daughter knew, like 2 years beforehand, she had a period kit, and that she had everything she needed in case it happened at school, which it did, it totally did, and they were prepared for that. But it was just kind of like, how can I do better for, not that my mom was a terrible mom, she was a single mom for a lot of my, adolescent life. So she was just working a full-time job, trying to keep a roof over our heads, and taking care of 3 kids under the age of 10. Like, I get it.
And so much was considered like, you don't talk about it. That's just not appropriate. And so they were teaching us in this weird way, like how to fit in society is this: you make things quiet. You don't talk about anything that's uncomfortable or inconvenient. And so they didn't know that they were just perpetuating that cycle.
I feel like, okay, I'm going to totally go into like Gen X boomers, millennials, and Gen Z. I feel like it's the boomers that don't want us talking about it. And now we're like talking about it. And so you'll see so many people say like, I don't talk to my parent or my dad or my mom anymore because Like, they don't like that I now have a voice. And
Yeah.
I've had so many friends that I've talked to that, and I've gone through that myself. Yeah, I'm not going to keep the peace here. Like, I'm not going to let you say X, Y, and Z about, ABC,
Yeah.
because it's not
Mhm.
okay to say that. Or I'm not okay with you treating my child this way. That's not how we treat people. Anyways, I'm
I
going
think
off.
a lot of us, like, I identify as an Xennial because they don't quite fit into Gen X. They don't quite fit into Millennial. That Xennial age group totally matches me, but I still consider it a subgroup of Gen X, to be honest. But I feel like we're the generation breakers. Like, we're the ones that are like, we're not doing this anymore. And it's a little wild to be in that position to be like, we're teaching our doctors about perimenopause. Like, we're telling them what labs to run. That's insane. So we're put in this really interesting position of like having these parents who were like, don't ask, don't tell. And honestly, I mean, my parents are both passed, but they were both incredibly emotionally immature. I mean, I always joke I was raised by like a couple of 12-year-olds, There was not this emphasis on like empowerment or bettering yourself or learning, it was just different. So it's weird for us to be in this situation. Also exciting, but I'm the same as you. I feel like so many of us are moms that are saying, we don't want our daughters to do this. We got to make this better for them.
Yeah, and I also, like, one of my parental units said to me, why did you give your kid a choice? Well, I gave them a choice because A, they're 14 years old, and this is my son's 17 now, and he's the one that has to deal with the consequences of things. Like, I'm not dealing with it. Like, basically, it's like, I can't remember what I gave him a choice on, but I would never have done that to you. Like, I would have
Yeah.
said, we're here at this time, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, but I just recently found out, it's so funny, I want to go back to this, that I am exennial. Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Like, they say that 1975, 76, and 77, so I was born in 75, that in there, and probably to 75 to 78, and I don't know where you fall in that.
78.
Yeah, they are on the cusp, and those that are on the cusp are also emerging leaders. They will feel some millennial and some Gen X. I just completely just go all Gen X, but I didn't know that, and I was like, wow, I actually like on the cusp of the thing. So that's kind of been like my role. But when I was watching the chart that the speaker was talking about, I think his name is Jason Dorsey. My daughter also falls in the Gen Z, Gen Alpha like cusp.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that those people in those areas have the leadership qualities because they have to be early adopters and leaders.
Interesting.
And it was very interesting. I was like, huh. Though my
It makes sense because, like, I feel like our generation, my sister's your age as well, so we both grew up in that. We had this really deep work ethic from Gen X, but a lot of the optimism of millennials. And it's a very unique little pocket because, like, my husband's older and he is solidly Gen X. He had a wildly different upbringing than I did. And I struggle sometimes to be like pulling him back a little bit towards that millennial side because it's just a little different than what he can wrap his brain around. So I do think we're a very specific subset.
Who is a badass woman in history you wish people knew more about?
But I have a soft spot for the women who were right there with extremely famous men because they were absolutely completely washed away. So Mileva Einstein, who collaborated on all of their research, who did the calculus that Albert couldn't do, and who agreed to not put her name on the research papers because she was a woman. And no one's heard of her. My doctor friend in town, I mentioned her, and she's like, I've never even heard of her. And I'm like, oh. Or Maria Anna Mozart, who is Wolfgang's older sister, who was the original, piano protege and from their father, and was playing the most incredible sonatas around and was doing top billing. No one talks about her either. Another one that lately I'm really interested in is Martha Gellhorn, who was basically one of the top war correspondents of the 20th century. She was the only woman at D-Day, and it was because she stowed away on a hospital ship. Military wouldn't give her clearance because she was a woman, because women shouldn't be on the front lines. And she said, well, forget that. I'm just going to hide. And she was right there reporting from Omaha Beach on D-Day, helping clear the wounded and clear bodies and stepping over landmines. Yeah, she had a 60-year career and reported on every major world event in 60 years. Truly incredible. And she was Hemingway's third wife. So whenever you can Google her right now, and every article will probably mention Hemingway in the opening 2 sentences.
So of those women you just talked about, who would you pick to go to coffee with, and what would be one thing you'd ask them?
I'd pick Martha because I really find her quite fascinating. And I think what I would ask is maybe not the most uplifting thing, but I'm very curious to know about the loneliness for choosing a life of bravery. Very interested to know what that looks like, because she was the only of Hemingway's wives who divorced him and said, because he tried to sabotage her career, and her career was everything to her. And she just decided career's coming first for me. And she believed that Americans needed to be exposed to the world stage and what was happening outside of our country. It's we still struggle with. So she had this grand life and these incredible adventures, and she stormed out on Hemingway and said, you don't get to do that to me. So she set these incredibly high standards, which kind of are accepted today, but back then they weren't. And I think she lived kind of a lonely life. And I would really like to know what that felt like. Were her choices, did they feel like enough? You know, like, do you wish you would have found a better balance in a weird way or not? I don't know. And and I also, because a big part of what I do is I break apart this idea of like badass women are up here and they're amazing and they're wonderful and they're perfect, because they're not. Every single one of them made mistakes and did something that you don't agree with. I can guarantee you. But I would like to know about her loneliness factor, because it's something that I've sort of struggled with my whole life, is just being able to kind of connect with people on a bigger level. It's partly where I write, because it's something I can do in like a controlled way. But Martha ended up committing suicide like in her 80s because she was very ill and she lost her vision and she couldn't write. She couldn't read her writing, and she took cyanide capsules. She couldn't do it. And so I just want to know about her passion about this life and what it was like living with the loneliness. I think I'd want to ask her about that.
Wow, I did not know. So you have a Substack. You kind of want to talk about that, and then I will definitely put that in the show notes where you write about these things.
Yeah.
A little bit about that, because this is how I learned I follow you on Instagram. I look at you, you're on Threads. It's the other place I'll see you. And then I was like, wait, she's a Substack. So talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to talk about your new book.
So Substack, I opened up a few years ago and I was like, I don't even know what to do with this thing, because it is a kind of a different platform. And I have this, I'm an Enneagram 4. I don't know if you do those Enneagrams or whatever, but I cannot do anything unless I have a unique spin on it. And so I didn't use it much because I didn't know what to say. And I didn't have a clear message. I had all these feelings, everything we're talking about, I've been doing quietly. And it really wasn't until last spring when a couple of friends of mine were putting on a writer's retreat in Sisters. And a big part of what they did is talk about platform, and they put everything into perspective for me. And they're like, you have your message, go out and do it. And I'm like, I don't think I had the confidence to do it till someone else said, why not? And all these things that we're talking about just kind of hit me. I'm 47, and it really kind of landed where I'm like, oh my God, time's moving on and I'm just still not doing what I want to do. I'm writing, but I want my message bigger, and I want more women to know about these women in history because they're so empowering and so amazing. And so I went home that day and made a list of everything that I wanted to do. And I made my first reel that reached 1 million views. It was about Eleanor Roosevelt, and everything kind of clicked from then. And so I went to Substack and I'm like, well, this is what I've got to do. And I wrote out my plan and I sent it out, and I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about these women. Here's my criteria for how I choose them. I'm going to do highlights. I'm going to do short stories, fictional short stories. And here we go. So I started doing that, and I started highlighting one woman a week. And then I started noticing that when I kind of incorporated our modern world with what these women teach us, those are the Substacks that do really well. So I do that a lot. I kind of go back and forth between fully researched article, which probably takes me about 3 weeks to research, write, edit, and then I actually hand it off to a historian friend who I pay to fact check it to make sure that I didn't miss anything, which there's always a few things that can be tweaked. Then I get those articles out once a week, and it's up to 6,000 followers. People seem really engaged, and there's all these women that say the same thing that you just said. They're like, why don't I know about this person? And that is what I am out to change. They kept these stories from us, and I am the worst for it. Being that little kid who grew up listening to men's stories always that was part of what planted the seed that told me I was forgettable. I wasn't good enough. I didn't deserve to be, confident about the things that I do. And these women, reading about them every week, fills that need that I have of someone saying, yes, you are good enough. Yes, you can do this. And I want that for every everyone else that reads, and men too. Men, I mean, I do get quite a few messages from men that read my articles and are like, I had no idea. Or sometimes they'll send my articles to their wife or their daughter. And I think that's like one of my favorite things when I get those messages.
I like some of the reels I saw one yesterday about Eleanor Roosevelt, but the reels that you do, and then it's like you kind of like bring it all together. You have a new book coming out. Let's talk about that. Like, what is the name? What's the short synopsis?
Yeah. I am so excited. I'm thrilled for this book. It's called The Secret Courtesan. It's out in February. And writing this book was unlike any experience that I've had writing. It's my 9th manuscript, and it came from somewhere else. I still look back and I'm like, I can't believe I wrote that. It is a dual timeline, and it is the story of a erotic statue gets unearthed in Venice. And the world decides that it must be this famous man from history. He's this famous artist, and this must be who did it. And our modern historian, she's tasked with sort of authenticating the research. And she has a pretty strong feeling that this is not from him, that was actually, the sculptor was a woman who was erased by history, erased from the historical record. And so she has to set out to prove everyone wrong and kind of kick up the dust in the art world, and all of the men in power are fighting to stop her. So these two women, 400 years apart, are both fighting for the statue.
Oh, I love that. I can't wait to read it. All right. Thank you for coming today, Kerry. I will put all the links to all the things in the show notes, so you can follow Kerry on Instagram, go to her Substack, and buy all her books. I can't wait for that book to come out. Thank you for coming. I really
Thank you for having me, and I'll get an early copy for you.
Yay! Thanks so much for listening to Over 50 and Frank. If today's conversation resonated with you, I'd love it if you'd follow the show, leave a review, or share this episode with a friend who needs to hear it. You can find links, resources, and everything we talked about in the show notes. I'm Shannon, and I'll be back next week with more candid conversations about style, wellness, and life after 50.